Good afternoon again. You are tuning in to the remote public scoping meeting for the last mile facility special permit application. We are streaming
我
to
们
YouTube,
我
so
们
I'm
现
just
在在我们也在 YouTube 上面播音。
doing an audio-visual check for the interpretation services. Thank you. We'll be getting started in just a few minutes at 2 p.m. Welcome, everyone. We will now begin our meeting. Okay, good afternoon and welcome. You are tuning in to the remote public scoping meeting for the last mile facility text amendment proposal. The City Environmental Quality Review or CEQR number for this application is 25DCP067Y. My name is Stephanie Shalou, and I'm the director of the New York City Department of City Planning's Environmental Assessment and Review Division, or EARD. Evren Olker-Kajar, Deputy Director of EARD, will co-host today's meeting. I want to thank everyone for taking the time out of your day to attend this virtual meeting. I also want to emphasize that we will hear from everyone who wishes to speak today, and the meeting will remain open until we've heard from all speakers. We also welcome written comments and testimony through 5 p.m. on Friday, May 16th, 2025, and we provide written comments the same attention and consideration as any comments that we receive live at this meeting. We will now proceed. Next slide. We will now proceed to the public scoping meeting for the last mile facility text amendment. Again, the CEQR number for this project is 25DCP067Y. Today's date is May 6th, 2025, and the time is approximately 2:02 p.m. Next slide. For those of you who are logged into Zoom and in need of interpretation services today, there are interpreters who are available in Mandarin, Cantonese, Spanish, and American Sign Language, or ASL, to interpret for people participating or testifying in those languages today. Please click the interpretation button on the bottom of your Zoom screen and select your preferred language. Also, please be sure to select the mute original audio button on your screen. Once you have selected these options, an interpreter will be there to interpret the meeting into your preferred language. ASL interpretation will occur within the main Zoom window as you are seeing now. If you would like to provide testimony in one of these languages today, you will have a 5-minute time limit to speak, and an interpreter will interpret your testimony live into English. Next slide. Again, my name is Stephanie Shalou, and I'm the Director of the Environmental Assessment and Review Division, or EARD, at the New York City Department of City Planning. I will be hosting today's scoping meeting. The Department of City Planning is acting on behalf of the City Planning Commission as the lead agency for the proposal's environmental review. As lead agency, the department will be responsible for overseeing the preparation and completion of the proposal's Environmental Impact Statement, or EIS. Next slide. Joining me today are several of my colleagues from the Department of City Planning. As I mentioned, Evren Olker-Kajar is the Deputy Director of EARD. Max Marinoff is the EARD Project Manager for the proposal. From the department's Transportation Office, we are joined by Douglas Rose, Director, Connor Clark, Deputy Director, and Maria Free, Lead Planner for the Zoning Text Amendment proposal. William Tutt, Counsel at the department, is also joining. I will also mention that we are joined by a handful of DCP staff members working in the background to ensure that today's meeting runs smoothly. Thank you all for your assistance as well. Next slide. Together, we are here to receive your comments on the draft scope of work for the last mile facility text amendment. The draft scope of work identifies the subjects to be analyzed in the upcoming draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS, and describes the methodologies that will be used in those analyses. The draft scope of work materials are posted online on the Department of City Planning's ZAP website. Next slide. The purpose of this public scoping meeting is to allow for public participation in the preparation of the DEIS at the earliest stage possible in the environmental review process. Specifically, scoping allows the public to help shape the DEIS before it is written. Toward that end, the department, as lead agency, will receive verbal testimony on the draft scope of work from elected officials, government agencies, representatives of the local community board, and members of the general public. As I mentioned, we also welcome written comments on the draft scope of work. Written comments can be submitted through Friday, May 16th, 2025 by 5 p.m. Next slide. At the end of the written comment period, the department as lead agency will review all comments, those that we received today, as well as any written comments we've received. After carefully reviewing all comments, the department will decide what changes, if any, need to be made to the draft scope of work and we will issue a final scope of work. It is the final scope of work that serves as the basis for preparing the draft environmental impact statement. Next slide. Today's marks the beginning of the written comment period for the draft scope of work. No decisions will be made today regarding the draft scope of work. Again, the purpose of today's meeting is to allow the public to provide their comments about the draft scope of work and allow the department to listen to those comments. It is important for all voices to be heard today. Next slide. I will now focus on the structure of today's meeting, which will be divided into 3 parts. During the first part, the Department of City Planning will provide a brief overview describing the last mile facility text amendment. Then our environmental consultant will provide a short summary of the draft scope of work. This presentation will be about 20 minutes. And then during the second part of the meeting, the department will hear testimony from elected officials, government agencies, and members speaking on behalf of the any community board. And then during the third and final part of the meeting, we will be receiving testimony from members of the general public, including organizations. On to a few logistics of today's scoping meeting. If you wish to speak and plan to access the meeting online using a computer, tablet, or smartphone, please remember to register online through the Last Mile Facility Text Amendment public scoping meeting page of the NYC Engage portal at www.nyc.gov/nycengage. A link to join us and provide your testimony will be emailed to you after you've completed the registration process on the NYC Engage portal, and we will add you to our speakers list. When it is your turn to speak, your name will be called and you will be promoted to panelist. This will allow you to unmute your microphone and the ability to turn on your camera if you wish. There will be a short period that it appears that you are no longer in the meeting. Don't be alarmed, you will automatically rejoin the meeting as a panelist. At that point, you will be asked to convey your remarks. To allow us to hear from everyone who wishes to speak, we ask that you limit your remarks to 3 minutes. If you're watching online, a 3-minute countdown clock will be running on the screen. At the 3-minute mark, your time will expire, at which point you will be asked to conclude your remarks. Please note that promoting speakers does take a moment, so we appreciate your patience. Next slide. An additional note to those of you joining us by phone, if you wish to provide testimony and joining via telephone, please select *9 when I prompt you. Please listen for me to call out the last 3 digits of your phone number, at which point you'll be given the temporary ability to share your testimony. You'll need to press *6 to unmute, and we will be able to hear you speak live at this meeting. When your testimony is complete or your 3 minutes have expired, whichever comes first, you will press *6 again to mute yourself. We would like to encourage dial-in participants who wish to provide testimony to register using our dial-in participant hotline, which was displayed at the beginning of this meeting. Please note that muting and unmuting registered speakers does take a moment, and again, we appreciate your patience. On to time limits. Speakers from the general public have 3 minutes to provide their testimony. There are a few exceptions to the 3-minute time limit. Elected officials, for example, are given the courtesy of jumping to the front of the queue and are not limited to 3 minutes. Once again, interpretation services are available today. For those of you wishing to provide testimony in Cantonese, Mandarin, Spanish, or ASL, 5 minutes of time will be allotted to those needing those services. Comments provided in Cantonese, Mandarin, or Spanish will be interpreted into English after the testimony is completed. Comments provided in ASL will be interpreted concurrently. Verbal and written comments on the draft scope of work in languages other than English, Cantonese, Mandarin, Spanish, and ASL will be interpreted and incorporated into the final scope of work. To those of you viewing us on live stream and wishing to testify, please be mindful of potential background noise during your testimony. Be sure that the live stream is muted when you begin your testimony to avoid hearing an echo. If anyone is viewing today's presentation but does not wish to provide testimony, we do encourage you to stream this meeting using our YouTube link on NYC Engage and City Planning website. Again, if you wish to provide written testimony, it can be submitted to the Department of City Planning. Our mailing address is shown here, 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271. Attention, myself, Stephanie Shalhoub. We also have an email address set up to collect comments on this item. The email address for this application is 25DCP067Y_DL@planning.nyc.gov. This information may be found on the NYC Engage portal and the Department of City Planning's ZAP website. As I mentioned, we will accept comments through Friday, May 16th, 2025 at 5 p.m. If you missed any of these instructions provided at the beginning of this meeting, please visit nyc.gov/NYC-engage for instructions on how to participate and provide testimony. At this point, we will move on to the first part of our meeting, where the Department of City Planning will present an overview of the proposed project, followed by a summary of the draft scope of work by our environmental consultant. I will now turn it over to Maria Free.
All right, great. Thanks, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Maria Free, and I'm a transportation planner with the Department of City Planning and the project manager for this last mile facility text amendment. Thank you for joining today's scoping meeting. We really appreciate your involvement. Next slide. So for the next 20 minutes or so, I'll give an overview of the proposed text amendment. Today's topic, of course, is the last mile facility text amendment. It would create a special permit and introduce a public review process for the siting of new, larger last mile facilities. Throughout this presentation, I'll answer things like, what is a last mile facility? What is the special permit? And how can you continue to participate? So before really jumping in, I wanted to show the steps required to create a special permit in the zoning resolution. We're early on, so this is a great time to be involved. Last summer, on the left side of the screen, the Department of City Planning announced plans to advance and propose a last mile special permit. We launched a website for people to learn more and contact us, and had early conversations with a small group of key stakeholders. Then a month ago, we released a draft proposal in the form of a draft scope of work. This document, along with the environmental assessment statement, officially kicked off environmental review, what's in teal, and this is when the environmental impact of the proposed special permit is studied. Then 2 weeks ago, we had an info session where I gave the same presentation and we had live Q&A. A recording of that session is also available on our website and on the Department of City Planning's YouTube page. That takes us to today, the scoping meeting. This is where you can give oral comments on the proposed text amendment and the environmental review process. If you would like to provide longer remarks, you can also submit written comments until May 16th. These comments are recorded in the public record and inform changes to the proposal. So based off of your feedback is how we revise the proposal. Following the teal environmental review comes land use review. That's the formal process to adopt a new special permit into zoning. It includes public review by community boards, borough presidents, city planning commission, and city council. Okay, so now to zoom out a little bit and discuss the state of deliveries in New York City. Today is the easiest it's ever been to shop online. People can order more and expect it to come faster. With the rise of e-commerce, changing consumer preferences, and population growth, there's been increased demand for packages and the facilities that deliver those packages. In 2017, approximately 1.1 million packages were delivered daily in New York City. Last year, there were 2.5 million. So that's an increase of over 200%. It also means that 1 in 3 New Yorkers will receive a package today. Now, delivering all those packages to New Yorkers is a logistical feat with its fair share of challenges. From parcel packing and sorting in a warehouse to getting to your doorstep, there are many steps in the process. And of course, the part everyone is most familiar with is at the end of the supply chain. On the right side of the screen, delivery trucks on the street, couriers with hand carts ringing doorbells, and of course, an occasional stolen package. Because getting these goods to New Yorkers is so critical, the city is doing a lot to promote sustainable delivery, lowering emissions from industrial-related trips, reducing the vehicular impact of industrial facilities on residential and mixed-use neighborhoods. On the operations side, on the left, there are programs encouraging off-hour deliveries during less congested hours of the day, redesigning the truck network, installing shared use lockers where you can pick up your parcels, permitting micro hubs and micro distribution, proposing an indirect source rule, and planning holistically for industrial uses in the city. The indirect source rule, want to call that one out because it could have one of the largest impacts on greening the industrial sector because it aims to reduce indirect air pollution from warehouses, like the pollution coming from vans and trucks. The indirect source rule, or ISR, could apply to both new and existing large warehouses. Then on the right side, on the vehicle and charging front, there are also initiatives focused on retrofitting and replacing heavy polluting trucks, creating shared electric vehicle charging hubs for trucks, encouraging cargo bikes and safe charging, as well as developing maritime freight blue highways to support mode shift from trucks to waterways. So this is to say that we see the proposed special permit as just one tool in the toolbox to promote a more sustainable freight network. Okay, so back to the last mile facility text amendment. What is a last mile facility? So there are often multiple warehouses an online order passes through before making it to your doorstep. These warehouses are sometimes called first, middle, and last mile. So first you place an order, then that order is processed and fulfilled in a first mile warehouse. So the teddy bear you wanted is picked off a shelf and packed into a box to be loaded onto a truck. That first mile warehouse, in the case of New York City, might be located out of state, maybe somewhere like Pennsylvania. Then the boxes are unloaded into a middle mile facility. Again, in New York City's case, this might be somewhere in New Jersey. There, your box with the bear is sorted by subregion and put onto another truck as it gradually makes its way closer to you. The second truck is then unloaded in a last mile facility, often in New York City boundaries. This is where your package is sorted by delivery route. Light and medium duty vehicles then deliver your bear just in time. This final warehouse before delivery is a last mile facility, or more specifically, what we are calling in this proposal, a parcel delivery facility. So as demand for packages has increased, so too has the demand for facilities that deliver those packages. More specifically, demand for fast deliveries requires warehouses located near consumers. For that reason, over the last 20 years or so, we've seen an increase in the number of last mile facilities in New York City, especially leading up to and during the pandemic. Last mile warehouses are often sited near where people live in order to meet short delivery times. We've all been stuck in traffic, and you know that the closer you are to your destination, the more likely you are to make it there on time. Last mile facilities are also located near major roadways and in industrial zones where they are permitted to be located. They generally occupy large sites with room for vehicle maneuverability and fleet parking, as well as ground floor space for the ease of loading and unloading goods. Now, large last mile or parcel delivery facilities tend to create more traffic than traditional warehouses. Parcel delivery facilities prioritize the movement of goods rather than other warehousing activities like long to medium term storage, assembly, or pick and pack. Last mile facilities have high vehicle and goods throughput and may operate up to 24 hours a day. According to the Institute of Transportation Engineers, a parcel hub, the closest typology they use to a parcel delivery facility, generates 2.5 times more vehicles on an average weekday than a standard warehouse. These high vehicle trips can affect congestion, traffic safety, air quality, and most medium-duty vehicles associated with parcel delivery facilities, such as walk-in or multi-stop trucks that you might see on the street, continue to rely on diesel engines, while the light-duty options like Sprinter vans typically run on gas. Parcel delivery operators have begun investing in electrifying their fleets, but it takes time and money to acquire the electric vehicles and to have the power to charge them. Now, since last mile facilities tend to locate as close as possible to consumers, the challenges of high trip generation are most felt by New Yorkers who live near these facilities. In other words, New Yorkers who live near industrial areas. So with the increase in last mile facilities in New York City, we've heard calls to regulate these facilities differently from regular warehouses, and we've listened. That's why we're proposing this text amendment. So the last mile facility text amendment seeks to do 3 things. 1, it would introduce a public review process for new, larger last mile facilities. 2, it would shift development of new facilities further from where New Yorkers live. And 3, encourage the use of sustainable delivery modes. In zoning terms, what that means is introducing the term parcel delivery facility as a use in the New York City zoning resolution and creating a city planning commission special permit for most new large facilities. Okay, so before going into the details, I also want to talk about what a special permit is. Today, if you wanted to open a new parcel delivery facilities, you would take your plans to the Department of Buildings or to DOB to be reviewed. If your plans were up to code and approved, you could open your facility. This is also called as of right development and is how most development happens in New York City. With a special permit, there's the addition of a public review process, ULURP, or the Uniform Land Use Review Procedure. You would take your plans for a new parcel delivery facility to the community board and borough president for comment. Then there would be a city planning commission and city council hearing and vote. If the special permit was granted, you would receive the permit and then you would go to the Department of Buildings for approval before opening your facility. Now, the text amendment would do 2 things. It would add parcel delivery facility as a new use in the zoning resolution and create a special permit for new larger last mile facilities. Today, a parcel delivery facility is considered a warehouse, and it's categorized under use group 9, general storage. We're proposing to add parcel delivery facility as a distinct use, also under general storage. So the exact definition of a parcel delivery facility and the structure of the special permit are things that we're looking forward to hearing your feedback on in a few minutes. For now, we've defined a parcel delivery facility as a type of distribution warehouse used primarily for unloading and sorting prepacked goods and reloading those goods onto vehicles certified as Federal Highway Administration vehicle weight classes 1 through 5 for final delivery. Little to none of the following activities occur in a parcel delivery facility: extended inventory storage, picking and packing, wholesale distribution, or in-person retail. Those weight classes I mentioned are also the types of light-duty and most medium-duty vehicles you see delivering packages today. This includes vehicles like SUVs, delivery vans, step vans, walk-in vans, utility vans, and small box trucks. So under current zoning, a parcel delivery facility, a warehouse, is not permitted in our residential and commercial zoning districts. That would remain the same with the proposed text amendment. You can't open a new parcel delivery facility anywhere in gray. In teal are our manufacturing zoning districts. These are parts of the city with a range of industrial and commercial activities. Today, you could open a new parcel delivery facility or warehouse as of right in these areas. With the text amendment, you would generally need a special permit to open a new, larger parcel delivery facility. So to receive a special permit, the City Planning Commission determines whether an application meets certain subjective criteria. These criteria are called findings and include things like proximity, the location of the proposed parcel delivery facility relative to communities disproportionately affected by the negative impacts of environmental pollution, concentration, the potential for an inappropriate concentration of last mile facilities in the surrounding area, environmental impact, the potential for the use to create or contribute significantly to reduced air quality, increased greenhouse gas emissions, or increased stormwater runoff. Remediation, the need to undertake environmental remediation work on the lot. Is the hypothetical applicant doing more than the minimum required to remediate the land? Traffic and safety, the potential for the use to contribute to serious traffic congestion or unduly inhibit pedestrian flow. And parking and loading, the size and configuration of off-street parking and loading on the lot as to not disrupt auto or pedestrian activity in the public right-of-way. There are also exemptions to the special permit. These are to ensure that small facilities and facilities that meet the city's environmental and sustainability goals can be developed as of right. The first exemption is one for facilities less than a certain size. The threshold we've chosen for now is 50,000 square feet of floor area. Most parcel delivery facilities today that exist operate at larger than that square footage. Smaller facilities also generate less trips and have less impact than the larger ones. Second, a water-dependent parcel delivery facility would not need a special permit to open. In the zoning resolution today, a water-dependent warehouse ships or receives materials or products by water as evidenced by operational docking facilities on the zoning lot. Exactly how to define water-dependent is something we'd like to hear your thoughts on. Our goal is to not inhibit the growth of maritime freight in New York City. Third, a parcel delivery facility with electric vehicle infrastructure that is also far from residents would be exempt. This means that a facility more than 500 feet from a zoning district that permits residences and meets certain electric vehicle charging infrastructure standards. Similar to the water-dependent exemption, we would also like to hear from you on what a reasonable electric vehicle standard looks like. Again, these exemptions are designed to not let the special permit burden smaller parcel delivery facility operations or operations using sustainable modes of transportation. Okay, now I said I would answer these questions. What is a last mile facility? It's a general term to describe the final warehouse before delivery. For this text amendment, we are proposing a more specific term, a parcel delivery facility. Why have last mile facilities become more common in New York City? The rise of e-commerce, changing consumer preferences, and population growth mean that there are more direct-to-consumer packages with faster shipping coming into New York City every day. What's a special permit? It's a public review process for certain new developments. In this case, it would require a case-by-case, site-specific review on most new larger parcel delivery facilities. Why is a special permit being proposed? For three main reasons. First, to introduce public review for new larger last mile facilities. Two, to shift development of new last mile facilities away from where people live. And three, to encourage the use of sustainable delivery modes. We recognize parcel delivery facilities play a critical role ensuring New Yorkers receive goods ordered online in a timely and efficient manner. But as demand for delivery grows, conflicts between those facilities that manage deliveries and the city residents have also grown. So we want to ensure the appropriate siting of future parcel delivery facilities. Lastly, how can you participate in this process? You are by being here, so you can provide spoken comments in a few minutes or submit written comments until May 16th. Okay. I also want to reiterate that we are early on in the text amendment process and value your feedback. The coming 10 days are a great time to provide feedback, as the further along we get in this process, the less the proposal can change because of legal processes. So there will be many more opportunities to give your opinion, but today and before May 16th are important. Lastly, if you want more information, please visit our website. There you will find several documents associated with the proposal, including the draft scope of work. You'll also find a recording of the info session and this meeting after it is over. And if you have any questions, you can email lastmile@planning.nyc.gov, which goes straight to my inbox and is listed on our website. Now I'll hand it to COVID to discuss the environmental review process.
Next slide, please. Good afternoon. My name is Kovid Saxena. I'm with TYLN, the environmental consultants for this project. Presented here is an overview of the draft scope of work, or draft scope, which provides the framework for the preparation of the draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS. The DEIS will be consistent with guidelines of the City Environmental Quality Review, that is CEQR, or Seeker Technical Manual, which is the standard guidance document for environmental assessment and review in New York City. The draft scope provides a detailed outline of how each technical area will be assessed, and for each of the technical areas, identifies study areas, types of data to be gathered, how these data will be analyzed, and how potential significant adverse impacts will be determined. The environmental review assessment is based on the increment or difference between the development that can occur as of right, that is without the proposed text amendment, and development that would occur with the proposed text amendment. The as of right development scenario is referred to as the no action condition, which serves as the baseline to evaluate the proposed text amendment. Development pursuant to the proposed action is referred to as the with action condition. The increment between these two scenarios is shown in row 4 of this table and serves as the basis for the environmental review assessment. To analyze potential significant adverse impacts of citywide actions, environmental reviews typically utilize a conceptual or prototypical analysis. Based on existing trends and reasonable projections, prototypical sites will be representative of recent parcel delivery facilities. Prototypes will be developed to generically determine the potential significant adverse impacts that could occur under the with action condition. Seeker technical areas considered include those listed here: land use, zoning and public policy, socioeconomic conditions, community facilities and services, open space, shadows, historic and cultural resources, urban design and visual resources, natural resources, hazardous materials, water and sewer infrastructure, solid waste and sanitation services, energy, transportation, air quality, greenhouse gas emissions and climate change, noise, public health, neighborhood character, construction, and effects on disadvantaged communities. In addition, the DEIS will include a mitigation chapter which will identify practicable mitigation measures to address significant adverse impacts. Where significant adverse impacts cannot be mitigated, they will be described as unavoidable adverse impacts.
Thank you, COVID and Maria, for that presentation. We will now move on to part 2 of our public scoping meeting, at which point we will be receiving testimony from elected officials, those speaking on behalf of a community board, and folks representing a government agency. I'll quickly recap our participation instructions. When it is your turn to speak, your name will be called and you will be promoted to panelist. This will allow you to unmute your microphone and the ability to turn on your camera if you wish to do so. There is a short period that it appears you're no longer in the meeting. Don't be alarmed, you'll automatically rejoin the meeting as a panelist. If anyone experiences technical issues that prevent you from sharing your testimony, we're going to pause, move on to our next speaker, and allow for troubleshooting to happen in the background, and then we will come back to you once those issues have been resolved. If anything happens technical-wise, please revisit the how-to guides on the NYC Engage website for assistance. Please also note that you can dial our dial-in participant hotline via one of the numbers shown on this screen, including 877-853-5247 with the meeting ID 618-237-7396. And when prompted for a password, dial 1. At that point, there will be a member of our staff able to help you. All right. The first speaker in this group is Councilmember Alexa Aviles, who I believe has not yet joined the Zoom. Councilmember Alexa Aviles, we are not seeing you. We will return to you as soon as you are able to join our meeting. We will proceed to our next speaker in this group, Lacey Tauber, who is speaking on behalf of Brooklyn Borough President's Office. Lacey, you'll be promoted to panelist at this time and given the ability to share your testimony.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Okay, great. Good afternoon. Thank you for holding this hearing today. I'm representing Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso. He is a co-applicant along with Councilman.
Lacey, if I can interrupt, we are getting some feedback. If there's a microphone.
Is that better? Is that better? I'm not sure what to do about that.
Proceed. I think we're able to hear you well enough.
Okay, sorry. I can't see you. I'm not sure if it's something with the Zoom. Let me see. Okay, no. Okay, is this okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So as I was saying, Brooklyn Borough President Reynoso is a co-applicant along with Councilmember Alexa Aviles and Assemblymember Marcela Matañez of the Last Mile zoning text amendment application that was submitted by the Last Mile Coalition in 2022 and has been working with advocates from all over the city to advance this effort and the accompanying indirect source rule legislation, or ISR. Our neighbors in Sunset Park and Red Hook are being disproportionately affected by an overconcentration of these facilities and the air quality and street safety concerns that accompany them. So VP Reynoso wants to thank DCP for moving forward with this work, which is so important for Brooklyn's environmental justice communities. DCP's version generally supports the goals of the coalition's draft, which were to address facility concentration and community impacts without affecting viable manufacturing businesses also located in industrial zones. The facility size threshold of 50,000 square feet makes sense, as well as the provisions to prevent on-street operations which can cause traffic congestion and dangerous streets. However, VP Reynoso has a few concerns with DCP's draft as currently written. First is definitions. I won't read all of them, but this is just to point out that DCP's draft definition of parcel delivery facilities is different from the definition of warehouse in the current draft intro 1130, the indirect source rule that I mentioned. Environmental review for the ESR is expected to begin this summer, so DCP should work with DEP to standardize the definition to avoid future confusion about the applicability of these policies. Additionally, the Borough President is concerned about the use of federal vehicle standards to define facilities, given the potential for technologies and associated federal policies and regulations to change. The second thing is sensitive receptors. Residential buildings aren't the only places where air quality and street safety impacts reach the public. The coalition's text amendment would have disallowed last mile facilities from locating within 1,000 feet of schools, parks, nursing homes, and public housing buildings. The borough president encourages DCP to consider adding a buffer for these uses as well. Next is clustering and cumulative impacts. DCP's analysis shows that the exemptions as currently written are likely to push new facilities into sub-area 2, located at least 1,000 square feet from residences and requiring EV charging infrastructure. Facility operators will be further incentivized to locate in sub-area 2 when the city passes the ISR, which will encourage operators to transition to zero-emission vehicles. This could lead to a high level of clustering in sub-area 2, which can still have impacts even though sub-area 2 is not directly adjacent to residential. For example, the loss of well-paying manufacturing jobs and heavily increased traffic through nearby residential zones. This can be addressed by adding a cumulative impact analysis requirement for facilities to locate in sub-area 2, and or based on the coalition's draft, adding a requirement that DOT analyze potential traffic congestion and street safety impacts for each facility, including their proposed truck routing information. Next is enforceability. While the borough president understands the difficulty of regulating anything other than land use through zoning, the provisions to encourage use of sustainable transportation modes as written will be difficult to enforce. Simply having EV charging infrastructure or a pier on site doesn't guarantee that a facility will use it. And in the case of EV infrastructure, it doesn't account for the use of other zero-emission vehicle types, such as cargo bikes. It's important to remember that even though EVs ameliorate emissions, they do not address PM 2.5 impacts from tires. The borough president recommends changing this provision to a finding, requiring operators to demonstrate how they will utilize zero-emission vehicles and/or waterways, rather than an automatic exemption just for the presence of infrastructure. Resiliency. According to the city's EJNYC map, more than half of existing last-mile warehouses and e-commerce distribution centers are located in the 2020s 100-year floodplain. DCP's current draft does not address this. The coalition's draft included compliance with any applicable waterfront district zoning requirements as a finding. The borough president encourages DCP to add this. Finally, Borough President Reynoso wants to encourage DCP to analyze the coalition's draft application as an alternative during the environmental review process. This would allow for future changes to be made based on the coalition's work without risking them being out of scope. The coalition is finalizing updates to their reasonable worst-case development scenario to help facilitate this. Thank you again for holding this hearing today and for working with us to protect our city's environmental justice communities.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony and for joining us today. And apologies for the rest of the audience for the audio issues there, but we were still able to hear you. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Councilmember Selvina Brooks Powers, Council Majority Whip. Council member, we will promote you to panelist at this time, and you will be able to turn on your microphone and camera if you wish and provide your testimony. Hello, welcome. Councilmember, you should be able to unmute yourself at this time.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm Councilmember Selvina Brooks Powers, proudly representing the 31st Council District in Southeast Queens, home to JFK Airport, and communities that are disproportionately impacted by warehouse traffic and air freight activity. I want to thank the Department of City Planning for taking this important step to bring greater regulation to last mile facilities. This issue is deeply personal for my constituents. A staggering 50% of Community Board 13, which I represent, is zoned for warehouse uses. We experience the brunt of truck traffic, pollution, and noise, all with little oversight. That's why I believe this proposal must go further to be truly meaningful for communities like mine. First, the definition of parcel delivery facilities must explicitly include air cargo. JFK is one of the busiest air freight hubs in the nation, and excluding air cargo from this definition would leave a massive loophole for facilities that have a direct environmental impact on my district. Second, the proposal currently applies only to new development or changes of use. That would grandfather in existing facilities, many of which are causing the very harms this text amendment seeks to address. I urge the department to consider a phased-in approach for existing facilities so we can begin to address the legacy impacts of these operations over time. Third, the 50,000 square foot threshold is too blunt a tool. Some facilities under that size still generate significant truck and delivery activity. I recommend revising this threshold to consider the volume of delivery operation, not just the floor area. Fourth, the 500-foot buffer from residential zones is inadequate. In Southeast Queens, facilities more than 500 feet away still have a major impact on nearby homes due to truck routes and neighborhood layout. We urge you to reconsider and expand this threshold. Lastly, we know the Port Authority operates under a separate lease, but I encourage the city to actively engage the Port Authority to facilitate voluntary compliance with this rule. I appreciate the department's efforts once again and urge you to take a closer look at how this proposal can better protect environmental justice communities like the one in which I serve. Thank you so much once again for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember, for being here today and for sharing your testimony. All right. Our next speaker is Julian Martin, who I believe is associated with the same council member's office. If we can just unmute Julian Martin from the attendees panel to confirm if they're speaking separately.
Hi, I'm not going to be testifying. I'm just here in support of the council member.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. We still do not have our council member Alexa Vilas in the room. That does bring us to the end of our part 2 of the meeting, where we hear from elected officials, government agencies, and folks speaking on behalf of a community board. So at this point, we will move to the third part of our public scoping meeting, where members of the general public are invited to speak for up to 3 minutes. So we will display our timer on the screen at this moment. I will call the speakers in the order in which they registered, and when it is your turn to speak, your name will be called and you will be promoted to panelist, again, allowing you to unmute and turn on your camera if you wish. Please remember that after your 3 minutes have expired, you will be asked to conclude your remarks. Again, if anyone does experience technical issues, we will proceed to our next speaker and troubleshoot in the background to make sure we're able to hear from all of our registered speakers today. Again, please do note that you're able to call in to our dial-in participant hotline at 877-853-5247. When prompted for a meeting ID, dial 618-237-7396. And when prompted for a password, dial 1, and the person on the other end will be able to assist you. At this time, we will move to our speakers who have registered online. Our first speaker is Jeremiah Kane. Jeremiah, we will promote you to panelist and you will be able to provide your testimony. Hi, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the Department of City Planning. My name is Jeremiah Kane, and I represent Prologis as a Senior Vice President. Thank you for allowing me to comment on the draft scope of work for the proposed last mile facility text amendment. Prologis is the global leader in logistics real estate, and in New York, we own 16 modern logistics facilities spanning 1.64 million square feet. Our facilities are critical to the local and national supply chain and play a key role in New York's economy, helping businesses of all sizes move goods, food, medication, clothing efficiently and sustainably. Targeting specific industries with zoning regulation should not be taken lightly. The proposed restriction on warehousing uses underestimates the sensitivity of the supply chain and threatens future investment in these facilities, which are essential for meeting the needs of household consumers and businesses alike. Restricting warehousing does not decrease the demand for distribution. It will simply move distribution outside the city, resulting in more vehicles miles traveled and fewer jobs. While we applaud DCP's decision to include in the draft scope of work pathways for as-of-right development, we do not believe the proposed regulation is the appropriate tool to reach the city's policy goals. Such an approach should be part of a coordinated strategy and should evaluate all ongoing regulatory measures together and holistically before implementing new restrictions. These ongoing measures, of course, include the proposed citywide indirect source rule and the larger industrial plan. The plan will explore how New York City can support a modern, growing, and sustainable industrial economy, and it will provide valuable data on research on land use, development, economic trends, environmental conditions, and offer recommendations for balanced industrial growth. Additionally, we encourage the city to consider alternative paths to sustainability, including maritime transport and blue highways. Shifting freight movement to the waterway can significantly reduce congestion while cutting greenhouse gas emissions. The city has taken a lot of important and good steps towards maximizing the potential of its blue highways, but the price of entry remains high, and additional incentives would make this mode of transportation and distribution more competitive and accessible. Fleet electrification, Prologis proactively invests in advanced electrical charging solutions. However, the complexity and unpredictability of permitting remains a major bottleneck. We encourage the city to streamline the permitting process for EV infrastructure. And lastly, microdistribution, strategically placed microdistribution facilities cut down on travel distances and enable utilization of lower carbon delivery methods like bike delivery. However, floor area and zoning district limitations reduce the financial feasibility of these facilities. Allowing more ground area, floor area for microdistribution will be helpful. Prologis is fully aligned with New York City's vision for sustainable and resilient supply chain. We stand ready to work with DCP to carefully craft policies that create economic opportunity locally, that strengthen rather than hamper the city's economy and progress towards sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your testimony and for being here today. I will note that everyone in the room is a registered speaker, so if you are in the Zoom, we will get to you in the speakers queue. All right, thank you. Our next speaker is Kate Goldman, who will be followed by Jim Wright, followed by Kevin Garcia. Kate Goldman, you are our next speaker. You'll be promoted to panelist now to share your testimony.
好嘅，多謝我哋下一位演講者係Kate
I think we
啦。
have a interpretation service.
Let's just pause for one moment.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I think we're set. Now to hear from our next speaker, Kate Goldman.
Thank you. My name is Kate Goldman, and I'm a housing and planning analyst at the Real Estate Board of New York. Thank you for the opportunity to offer testimony regarding the Department of City Planning's draft scope of work for the proposed special permit for last mile facilities. REBNY recognizes DCP's commitment to studying the regulation of last mile facilities as a means of reaching policy goals related to traffic, street safety, and environmental sustainability. REBNY does not support the proposed special permit as a mechanism to reach these goals. Last mile facilities directly support New Yorkers' daily needs and result in considerable economic benefits for the city, including building investment, property tax generation, and job creation. A modern, well-located distribution network must also support the growing demand for e-commerce. The development of last mile facilities has resulted in brownfield cleanup, energy efficiency investments, and stormwater management that would not otherwise occur. Disincentivizing these investments would run counter to the proposed action's stated environmental goals. Based on historical precedents, we believe the draft scope of work is underestimating the loss of future facilities, and this action should not proceed. Since the adoption of the self-storage special permit in 2017, only 2 applications have been approved, and no applications have been approved since the adoption of the M1 Hotel special permit in 2018. However, if the department chooses to proceed, the draft scope of work should analyze the following: whether a ministerial action could achieve the same public policy goals as a special permit without the associated costs and burdens of special permits. A higher square footage threshold, 50,000 square feet, is too low and captures 50% of existing last mile facilities. Additional exemption categories, including brownfield cleanup sites, rail-dependent facilities, and sites that actively utilize bike delivery to align with the department's own climate equity and industrial development goals. Elimination of the buffer zone adjacent to C4 to C6 districts and MX districts, where residential is not the primary use, and a reduction of the buffer zone distance to align with existing precedents in zoning. The direct and indirect displacement impacts related to clustering complementary businesses if facilities are not renovated or built, such as vehicle repair. The potential of lost revenue to the city and the adverse impacts to air quality, congestion, construction, job growth, environmental remediation, and electrification goals if new facilities are not built or existing warehouses are not upgraded. How the use of a special permit to limit facility growth conflicts with goals of the citywide industrial plan, particularly its emphasis on industrial job retention, economic development, and infrastructure modernization. Given the structure of the special permit, it is also critical to identify vesting standards before starting the land use review process. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and we look forward to further engagement on this topic.
Thank you. Thanks very much for your testimony and for being here today. Our next speaker is Jim Wright. Jim Wright, you'll be promoted to panelist now to share your testimony. Jim Wright will be followed by Kevin Garcia, Paul Travis, and Catherine Trujillo.
Good afternoon, and thank you for holding this hearing. My name is Jim Wright, speaking on behalf of the American Institute of Architects, New York. AIA New York agrees with the need, purpose, and goals of the special permit process outlined in the text amendment. We broadly support the positions contained in the draft scope of work and offer recommendations to make the siting of these facilities more responsive to local community needs and the approval process more predictable to all stakeholders. The draft scope of work defines a parcel delivery facility as a type of distribution warehouse used primarily for unloading and sorting pre-packed goods and reloading these goods for final delivery. AIA New York agrees with the intent of the definition. However, we suggest that the Department of City Planning also consider including similar business to consumer facilities such as online grocery deliveries and consumer home goods deliveries, which have similar distribution and delivery characteristics and with similar potentially negative impacts. A parcel delivery facility would be an allowable use in all M, MX, and C8 zone districts with a CPC special permit required for new facilities with 50,000 square feet or more of zoning floor area, exempting smaller facilities with less floor area. The draft scope includes also 2 other exemptions to the special permit requirement. The exemption for water-dependent uses is overly vague with no criteria established for actual mode shift to maritime deliveries. The exemption for parcel delivery facility separated from residential zoning district by 500 feet or more with EV charging facilities would undermine the effectiveness of tighter regulations. Instead, both exemptions could be added to the list of special permit finding criteria that the City Planning Commission considers in the discretionary review, thereby encouraging maritime freight deliveries and the conversion of carbon-fueled trucks to EVs. Finally, AIA New York suggests that urban design criteria be added to the list of findings. This category could include private and public realm improvements, such as screening of on-grade parking and loading areas, site landscaping and street trees, green roofs, relief from large blank walls, and coordination with designated truck routes. Thank you for your consideration of our comments. We look forward to the development of a special permit process that equitably balances the needs of all stakeholders.
Thank you. Thank you for being here and for providing your testimony. Our next speaker will be Kevin Garcia, followed by Paul Travis, followed by Catherine Trujillo. Kevin Garcia, you'll be promoted to panelist at this time to share your testimony. I would also note that if you do wish to speak today, we'll need you to register through the NYC Engage portal. And once you've received that link to join, don't share it with anyone else. Otherwise, we'll get more than one participant with the same name in our Zoom. All right, Kevin Garcia, we are ready for your testimony.
Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Garcia, and I'm the Senior Transportation Planner with the New York City Environmental Justice Alliance. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Founded in 1991, NEJA is a nonprofit citywide membership network linking grassroots organizations from low-income communities of color in their struggle for environmental justice. NEJA is also a part of the Last Mile Coalition, a citywide coalition working to regulate last mile warehouses in New York City. And since 2021, this coalition has worked to raise awareness about the impacts of last mile warehouses and even submitted a zoning text amendment with Councilmember Alexa Vilas, the Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso's office, and Assemblymember Marcela Mitanes. We are pleased to see that the Department of City Planning is taking the necessary steps to adjust the siting of these facilities via the City Planning Commission special permit process. However, we have concerns about the preliminary language being proposed by DCP. We are concerned that the proposed language does not address the clustering of these facilities. Today, these facilities can be built as of right in manufacturing and C8 districts without any public or environmental review processes. This means that there is no consideration for the location of existing facilities before a new facility is built, or the impacts of the increased vehicular traffic on the area and our aging infrastructure. Without any review or systemic planning, we will continue to see clustering of these facilities. Furthermore, the same districts where these facilities can be built can be directly adjacent to residential uses, and many of the communities near these facilities are low-income communities of color. This means that sensitive receptors such as schools, parks, nursing homes, and public housing will not be considered when a new facility is proposed. To be approved for a permit, DCP should include buffers from sensitive receptors to minimize the adverse impacts on these communities. Lastly, DCP's current preliminary language looks to provide exemptions for 1, water-dependent facilities, and 2, facilities more than 500 feet from residential districts that meet certain electric vehicle charging infrastructure standards. While the push for reducing truck dependency is admirable, we are concerned that this will provide a loophole for warehouse developers to build these facilities without any public or environmental review. We worry that the enforcement of this will be overlooked and that there is no guarantee that these warehouse operators will use these tools to reduce truck dependency or move towards less emission-intensive modes of deliveries. DCP must expand on this language to ensure that these warehouse operators are reducing vehicular traffic and emissions. And as mentioned earlier, we have submitted an application, and we hope that DCP will use it as an alternative for its environmental review. Thank you so much for your time and consideration, and we will provide longer written comments by the 16th.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for providing your testimony and for being here today. Our next speaker is Paul Travis. We do have 2 participants with that name. If Paul Travis, you could click the raise hand button on the bottom of your Zoom screen so we can get the right one. Paul Travis, if you could click the raise hand. All right, let's go ahead and promote that speaker so we can hear from Paul Travis. Paul Travis will be followed by Catherine Trujillo, Willis Elkins, and Christina Botego.
Hello, and thank you for holding this hearing. My name is Evan Wasaki. I am a project manager at Washington Square Partners. We are representing Steuben Foods, the owner of the largest available industrial site in Southeast Queens, the former Elmhurst Dairy. Our site is located within an industrial business zone and has manufacturing zoning. We have been marketing the site for redevelopment for several years. This has included an intensive marketing effort and site visits by over 40 qualified parties. We have learned that last mile facilities are a critical element of the market for new industrial buildings in Southeast Queens. The requirement for a special permit for this use has already had a chilling effect. If this requirement were to be legislated, it will be impossible to redevelop the site, and we would have no alternative but to seek non-industrial uses for the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. All right. I believe that we are going to go to our next speaker, Catherine Trujillo. Catherine, you'll be promoted to panelist in just a moment, and then followed by Willis Elkins, followed by Christina Botego. Catherine Trujillo, you are our next speaker.
Good afternoon. My name is Kat Trujillo, and I'm the Deputy Director at Uprose. Uprose is a community-based organization founded in 1966 that works at the intersection of racial justice and climate change in Sunset Park. Uprose is a founding member of the Last Mile Coalition, a citywide group of environmental justice and public health advocates formed in December 2021, fighting to regulate last mile trucking facilities across New York City. The coalition has been advocating for a zoning resolution text amendment to address the explosive growth of last mile trucking facilities due to the serious environmental and health burdens they impose. As part of the Last Mile Coalition, Uprose has been working to educate Sunset Park residents on the dangers associated with truck and warehouse pollution. For example, we had a last mile informational session at our office in February, where we trained residents to submit public testimony to the City Council and informed them about upcoming dates on last mile related legislation, including today's environmental scoping meeting. We're encouraged that the city is moving forward with the zoning text amendment and thank the Department of City Planning for giving us the opportunity to offer public comment today. Unfortunately, the proposed zoning text amendment diverges in critical ways from the version that was put forth by the Last Mile Coalition. First, Sunset Park and other waterfront communities like Red Hook, Maspeth, and Hunts Point are already overburdened by last mile facilities and their associated truck traffic and air pollution. Uprose, as well as the Last Mile Coalition, believes that the city's draft does not go far enough to prevent further clustering in these overburdened neighborhoods, many of which are disadvantaged communities under state law. Our proposal recommends a minimum of 1,000-foot buffer between last mile facilities and sensitive receptors, including schools, NYCHA housing, parks, nursing homes, and other last mile facilities. In contrast, the city's draft zoning text amendment proposes only a 500-foot buffer, and only from residential zones that meet specific electric charging infrastructure standards. We're concerned that this will not do enough to prevent clustering and may not be a suitable buffer for residential zones that are next to manufacturing zones, especially those from 4th Avenue to the waterfront in Sunset Park. Second, the city's proposed zoning text amendment also provides an exemption from review for water-dependent facilities. According to the Last Mile Parcel Delivery Facilities Market Assessment, some PDFs are located on the waterfront, but they are not currently using the water to move goods since the network for maritime shipping of parcels is still being developed. Although DCP is using the definition of water dependent already in the zoning resolution, they also carve out an ambiguous exception of this definition with or by similar standards to be specified by DCP. This is similar to their electric vehicle charging infrastructure standards. This ambiguity can mean anything and should be defined in consultation with local community groups. Third, we ask that DCP remember the vast majority of these last mile facilities are owned by large multinational corporations that can't afford a special permitting process.
All right, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Your time is. Thanks for your testimony. We will accept your written comments if you can share those through the email or hard mail addresses that we shared at the beginning of our meeting. Thanks for being here and for your testimony. Our next speaker, Willis Elkins, does not appear in the room. And our next speaker, Christina Botego, I believe will be speaking. Councilmember Alexa Velez will be speaking here. Can we promote Christina Botego participant into the panelist column so that we're able to hear the council members' testimony?
Hi, everyone. Christina Botego. I am Deputy Chief of Staff for Councilmember Aviles. I do want to cede my time to the council member. She either is on already or will be on shortly.
Okay, we don't yet see her in the room. I wasn't sure if she was with you, so we will go to her directly when she joins.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. We will proceed to our next speaker, which is Neil Weisbard, followed by Mitchell Corby, followed by Christopher Johnson. So our next speaker will be Neil Weisbard. We'll promote you to panelist at this time.
Hi, I'm going to just reserve my comments in writing. Unless you're responding to questions at this time.
We're not at this time, just
Perfect.
we're just listening to testimony.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. We'll look forward to those written comments. Our next speaker is Mitchell Corby, to be followed by Christopher Johnson.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I appreciate it very much. My name is Mitch Corby. I'm a land use planner and attorney. And like Paul Travis and Washington Square Partners, I represent Steuben Foods, the owner of a 15-acre site in Elmhurst, Queens, that has been largely underutilized for many years, zoned manufacturing and within an IBZ. This plan will actually increase environmental impacts. It will have the reverse effect of the intended idea of promoting sustainability and environmental sensitivity. And that's because more folks will be driving greater distances for their packages. Vehicles and delivery facilities will be located outside the city, and those same trucks will be having to travel much greater distances to deliver their packages. It will not constrain demand for sure. We all know the society that we live in, and we all want our packages tomorrow. Actually, we want our packages today. And as such, it will not decrease demand. And so constraining the delivery ability will simply increase the environmental impact. The study itself seems to be hitting all the impact areas. I assume we're doing a prototypical analysis, which I think is a mistake in light of the fact that each one of these facilities that exist today is different. It's quite remarkable to look at this on an example basis, and instead we have to consider how different each one of these sites are given the fact that they're broadly permitted today. Relatedly, if we limit them to 50,000 square feet and continue to allow them as of right, what it does is makes non-conforming lots and lots of warehouses that are out there today, meaning none of them can expand. They'll all essentially be in a straitjacket. This is a real concern to those existing facilities. So I would also note that the local supply chain is extensive, and it includes not just households, but hospitals and schools and a variety of non-for-profit and community facility uses, all of which would be constrained if we're not able to locate these in the future. As to that issue and the chilling effect that this is already having, folks are already thinking ahead to this. The idea that you'd have to obtain a 2-year-long special permit resulting in review by the city council, the 51-member city council, makes very little sense when you consider the intention here, which is to deal with the environmental issues. Much better to have this be a non-ULIP action and ministerial review where the same issues can be considered, or at the very worst, have it be a BSA action like schools and manufacturing zones. No reason to have this elevated to the city council review and a full ULIP politicizes something unnecessarily. At the end of the day, this is being targeted to all manufacturing zones, which we think is a mistake and should be much more narrowly construed. Thanks so much, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Thanks for providing your testimony and for being here. We are joined in our Zoom now by Councilmember Alexa Vilas. So we will go to Councilmember at this time, and then we will wrap up with our last registered speaker, Christopher Johnson. Councilmember, we will promote you to panelist at this time, and we will provide able to provide your testimony. Production, if we can go back one slide, since this speaker will not be time limited.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, welcome.
Great, thank you so much. I'm Councilmember Alexa Vilas, representing District 38 in Brooklyn. I want to thank DCP for getting us to this point today. So the regulation of last mile facilities is really something that I've worked on pretty tirelessly for my first entire term. And I really want to thank the last mile advocates for their guidance and support throughout this entire process as well. Ensuring that these facilities cannot be clustered in environmental justice communities and that the definitions agree across agencies is going to be really important to this process and hopefully the final outcome. So with regards to the proposed action and draft scope of work, I just wanted to point out 3 top level concerns from the perspective of a district that is really saturated with last mile facilities. Overall, we must ensure that the proposed exemptions to and the findings for the special permit are really carefully defined with specific language that accomplishes our policy goals without creating like overly broad loopholes. I hope that these comments will be reflected in the proposal as we move forward. So first, I really appreciate that the findings for the proposed special permit include a consideration of proximity to communities disproportionately affected by the negative impacts of environmental pollution. However, I am concerned that the language is too vague and should be more specific in identifying the community facilities that are at particular risk from truck traffic and other impacts of last mile warehouses. So to this end, I'd like to add proximity to sensitive uses as defined in the New York City Air Code. This generally refers to schools, hospitals, parks, and would add to this list NYCHA facilities due to the high asthma rates, as well as an overall population composed of 25% of seniors. Second, with regards to exemptions, while I appreciate incentivizing the water-dependent uses, I really want to urge DCP to better define the term water-dependent to reflect the warehouse facility operators that must rely on predominantly on water distribution, so that we're actually reducing truck traffic. Finally, with regards to creating an exemption for facilities more than 500 feet from the residential areas where there is electric charging infrastructure, again, I'd like to urge DCP to further define this exemption. As I'm simultaneously working on an indirect source rule, we can foresee a future where charging infrastructure maybe has been built out in the IBZ and thereby leading to and all future facilities being exempt, but I really want to urge the consideration to be given requiring EV infrastructure that is proportional to the operational needs of the facilities. DCP should develop some kind of formula that will ensure that the facility relying on this exemption truly is operating an electric fleet for both the incoming and outgoing truck traffic. The concern being that if a facility simply installs, let's say, EV chargers to take care of an exemption and proceeds to operate conventional gas-dependent truck fleet, we would not see the benefit or the intent of what we are trying to do. So again, I just want to thank you for the consideration. I really urge DCP to begin public review this fall. Again, representing communities saturated with last mile facilities that in addition to other environmental justice polluting infrastructure, is a serious challenge and has driven much of this work to ensure that we are both addressing, equity issues, we're addressing public health, and we're also meeting the needs of our growing city, which includes, a distribution network for goods and services that is taking into account our health and wellness. So I think with that, thank you so much for the time and the courtesy, and certainly to everyone who has been working on this to get a city that is more equitable, healthier, and better for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here and for providing your testimony. All right, our next speaker will be Christopher Johnson. Christopher Johnson, we will promote you to panelist now, and you'll be able to provide your testimony.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Yeah. Hello. My name is Christopher Leon Johnson. I'm at City Hall. I'm testifying right now. I got to testify aside. So I'm here to support the plan that you guys have. But my thing is that what you guys need to start doing is have the commissioner, Mr. Daniel Granadic, I just saw to y'all just like 5 minutes ago, to include the deliveristas in this situation. Not only the deliveristas worker just. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, the worker just not only to include the Worker Justice Project, talk to Liga Julapa, who operates as Dorset, New England, under the city contracts, under the clerk, and speak to the street vendor project, because they need to be able to access those same facilities too. I totally support the creation of jobs because of this initiative, but at the same time, the deliveristas and the street vendors are seen as business owners too, and they deliver food too. Even the street vendors deliver food because sometimes they got to leave out their space and go down the block and deliver food, including deliveristas. So at the same time, they need to to really open up a certain amount of square feet. I believe that every last mileage company that gets a permit needs to be able to give a certain, like at least 25% of their space to the Lost Delivery Nistos, and 25% to the Worker Justice Project, and 25% to the street vendor project. So that means 50%. So that means half of the property should be going to the street vendor project and deliveristas, while at the same time that these facilities need to be able to allow these guys and gals to start using the bathroom. Not only use the bathroom, shower, hang out, and relax inside the break room, because what's going on is I'm outside City Hall right now, and they're supposed to be a deliverista hub that the city planning approved, and the city planning approved, and for the deliverista hub outside City Hall Park, outside City Hall, right outside the gate, police gate, and it's still not built yet. So I'm trying to see. I know that there's a lot of political thing that's going on with this stuff, but the same. So while since last mile delivery is mostly going to go through the city planning, I hope it does. While we at it, we need to make sure that the deliveristas and the street vendors are able to be able to use those facilities too, because they are essential, just as the Amazon workers, such as the UPS, FedEx, and the postal workers, and any other organization that do last mile delivery. At the same time, and they do matter, because the people that do Lyft and Uber, Lyft and DoorDash and Grubhub, they now deliver PSPs and Xboxes and headphones and all that type of electronics now. So they should be able to use the same. They should be able to get the same rights and the same respect as the UPS and Amazon drivers and all these other type of other drivers. So thank you for having me on here. But like I said, I'm gonna submit written testimony on this. So Mr. Dan Granadic, I hope you listen to this. I hope you please talk to Liga Galapa, Worker Justice Project, and the Street Vendor Project, who's under Urban Justice Center, and add us into it. By the way, Dan's leaving right now to City Hall. So thank you. Shout out to Dan Granadic. He's leaving City Hall right now. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for being here and for providing your testimony. We look forward to your written comments. At this point, this brings us to the end of our registered speakers list. So at this point, we're going to take a 5-minute recess to allow anyone who might be viewing on YouTube or hadn't yet had a chance to register to speak to have an opportunity to do so. Again, our registration information is shown here on this screen. You can dial our dial-in participant hotline for assistance if you had any trouble registering. We will now take a 5-minute pause and be back at 3:30 to hear from any speakers who've registered during this recess. We look forward to hearing from you if you haven't yet had an opportunity to speak. See you all in a few minutes. All right, good afternoon and welcome back. We can go to our next slide. Great. And do we have our ASL interpreter spotlight? Perfect. You are tuning into the remote public scoping meeting for the last mile facility text amendment. Again, for the record, the city environmental quality review number is 25DCP067Y. My name is Stephanie Shalou, Director of the Environmental Assessment and Review Division at the Department of City Planning. We're currently on part 3 of the scoping meeting, where members of the general public were invited to speak for up to 3 minutes. We were taking a 5-minute pause to allow for anyone who did not yet have a chance to register to speak to have an opportunity to do so. We did not receive any additional registrants during our pause. So at this time, no one else has indicated that they do wish to speak today at this meeting. Is there anyone else in the room who does wish to provide testimony? All right, seeing none, we will move ahead to close the public scoping meeting. For those of you who had difficulty providing testimony or registering, please do recall that you can submit written testimony to us via these 2 methods that are shown on the screen right now. We accept email comments at 25DCP067Y_DL@planning.nyc.gov, or if you prefer, you can mail them to us at the address shown here, 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271. Attention, myself, Stephanie Shalou, at the New York City Department of City Planning. We appreciate everyone's participation today for providing your testimony. We look forward to receiving your written comments. As I mentioned at the top, comments received during this meeting and received through the comment period ending Friday, May 16th, 2025 at 5 p.m. will be summarized and responded to in the final scope of work. We appreciate everyone's participation and I hope everyone has a great day. It is currently 3:33 p.m. and this public scoping meeting is now closed. Thank you for your participation. Have a great day.